Broadcasting from Park Avenue West, you're watching WMFD Television, Channel 68.1, Mansfield.
This program discusses sensitive mental health issues, including suicide. Viewer discretion is advised.
Maybe an hour after we got the message that we lost Danny, Danny's sister said to us, we were all crying, and she says, "What do we do? What do we tell people?" And I'm like, "Baby, we got to tell them the truth. This is nothing that can be hidden, because otherwise the suicide will win."
We're not mental health professionals. It's just something that happened to our family. We direct people other places. And most important of all, I think, don't quit. Keep fighting. Keep living. Things will get better.
Good evening and welcome to Sparking the Conversation. I'm Jeff Heck, and this is my wife, Donna. We're part of 33 Forever, and we're so excited to be able to bring you weekly half-hour messages, stories, and resources surrounding mental health topics and challenges. Now, our show's purpose is to provide both hope and information and inspiration, making conversations about mental health the norm.
Now, our guest tonight is Eric Stigall. Eric is a local funeral director with Wappner Funeral Directors in Mansfield, and he is also invoked in providing spiritual care related to disease, death, and dying for patients and families at Ohio Health in Mansfield. He has a master's degrees in chaplaincy and bioethics. Welcome, Eric. It's so good to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeff and Donna.
The one thing that as I sat here before we introduced you, when we had our pilot show and we watched it together, Eric was at our house. And
right,
Eric was called to his purpose that night. It takes a while for me to cry. It takes a lot for me to cry, but that first show did it. And Eric just went right into his comfort mode and put his hand on my shoulder, held it, and it meant the world to me.
Thank you. I had forgotten about that, but
Yeah,
that was a very memorable evening and moment for everyone.
It truly was.
That was special. And we're glad you shared that with us. So, Eric, we talked to Donna as Donna was introducing you, and I was thinking about the things you're doing. You have a very specific experience and very, I think, really important experience when you're talking about mental health, especially in the area of grief.
Absolutely.
And you've had training and you've got all kinds of experience in that way. But just share with our audience kind of how you got into that field to begin with, how you ended up working with folks who are in the process of having illness, disease, even death and dying, and now in the funeral industry. Tell us about that journey. How'd you get there?
Yeah, so I got into that field pretty much through my educational journey. That master's degree in chaplaincy and ethics has a specific niche in it. You have to do what's called a field experience, and I chose to do mine in the healthcare setting and found myself falling in love with it, specifically in hospice care. So kind of meeting families, at the end of life for their individual, and also in critical care and emergency room chaplaincy as well. There you meet families, and it's kind of that in between. You don't know if death is going to happen or if they will be healed.
Yeah, and was it hard for you to adapt at first because you're surrounded by so much sadness and pain? Was it something, I'm sure at your very young age, to be that person that someone goes to in the saddest time of their life?
Yeah, it was very difficult, and I would argue that if you're called and gifted at providing people with grief counseling, if you will, and spiritual and emotional support, that it will always be emotionally difficult in some aspects.
Well, and I think, just based on my experience in life and our experiences with grief and all the problems that goes along with that for individuals, for families, for communities even, I think that role that you've had and that you've had professionally and you continue to have professionally is so vital to our community, because I think sometimes we lose track of the people who are actually going through the experience of their life ending and the grief that causes, and then the grief for the people around them. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I appreciate you sharing that, because really that's why I so appreciate folks who check in on their grieving loved ones. The United States has a very specific way of their funeral model. So, you have your funeral or celebration of life, and everybody goes home. And then you're sitting there at home.
And that's when the pain begins.
And that's when the true grief starts to manifest and begin, because there's no more busyness, there's no more planning, and that person's life, you have to sit there with that weight. Or with those good memories,
Right.
I mean, it's both. But, encouraging people to, in those weeks, months, years, grief never stops. It's a cyclical process. You're still remembering that person's birthday, remembering that anniversary if you were married to them, remembering their birth if you experienced that. It continues on, and memories always continue on.
And I'm sure, how do you get them to remember the good memories instead of the bad?
I simply, encourage them to share a good memory. So whether if it's, in a time of thinking through their obituary and reflecting on their life, whether if it's time in the healthcare setting where this person has passed and their family is at the bedside, why don't we share a good memory about Mr. Smith and honor his life that way?
Mm-hmm. So all of this, I think, is so important for us to have these conversations. We have some very specific conversations about some of the unique challenges in the healthcare system, in the funeral industry, in the grief industry, if you will, which is kind of what you're talking about.
Right, yeah.
After we come back. But we got to take a quick break. We'll be back here on Sparking the Conversation right after this.
Hi, I'm Joe Trollian, the Executive Director for the Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board. Addiction to drugs and alcohol create a personal struggle as well as impact those around you. You are not alone. We have many professionals and organizations who care. Reach out for help today. Know it before you need it. Visit Know It, the letter B, the number 4, the letter U, needit.com.
Brought to you by the Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, growing and preserving a legacy of hope and success within our community.
Forgiven.
Right now, get the shareable $8.99 bundle with a 20-piece chicken McNuggets and 2 large fries.
If he only knew
how much we would miss him
and how many lives she impacted just by being here.
I wish I had understood that the behaviors I was witnessing actually were warning signs.
I wish she had known there were other options.
The hard work you put in now will pay off.
You don't really know what you're going to be in the future. You could be the next doctor, the next psychiatrist that helps those children understand their mental health issues.
If your long-term disability claim was denied, listen closely. You may be able to recover money. Unum is one of the largest disability insurance carriers, and companies like Colonial Life, New York Life, and National Life Group are all part of the Unum family. Unum was fined millions for wrongly denying claims. You may be owed compensation. Let us help you through the appeal process.
Call 800-841-9215. That's 800-841-9215.
I am a paid non-attorney spokesperson.
What are you looking for?
This program discusses sensitive mental health issues, including suicide. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Sparking the Conversation. We're here having a wonderful discussion with Eric Stigall of Ohio Health and Wappner Funeral Directors, where we have been talking about grief. These past 2 years with our pandemic, with COVID, and we talked a little bit in the break, it has been like almost 2 years of grief.
Definitely. It's been 2 years of grief, and not just grief in losing an individual we may know or a friend of a friend who we may know physically due to COVID in their physical body, but we've also lost many other things. If you think about it, we've lost community We've lost fellowship. We've lost a sense of in-person meetings. I always joke I would have loved to bought stock in Zoom in January.
Yes.
We've lost going out to eat. We've really lost and are grieving a sense of community.
I think the other thing we've lost is we've lost some of the connectedness between us as people. There's so much turmoil in our system now in our communications with each other because we've gone so virtual, and I don't think necessarily that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I would say it's not healthy.
Right.
I mean, human beings were wired to be in connection with other human beings. And talking through a tablet or through a computer screen is not great. I finished some of my master's classes on Zoom, and we'd have some people who were asleep, some people who were having a glass of wine, So we got the etiquette page after that first week.
But yeah, that's and we talk about that. But the thing that I remember crying often when you see the stories on TV of people losing a loved one from COVID and the families not being able to be brought into that room.
Absolutely.
And
I didn't have that personal experience as a chaplain.
Okay.
I had friends who work in chaplaincy in other states who said, Eric, we never thought we would have to take our personal iPhone into the room and stream in a family to say goodbye to their loved one. And my argument has always been if the chaplain can go in full protective equipment, the family member can go in full protective equipment and take their loved one's hand in their dying final moments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what a loss. I mean, that's and the other thing I think people have lost, and it relates to your other professional role, is the funeral. So I mean, we went all that time. We lost a member of our family during that period of time, and I think you did too, right? And so.
I've lost two.
That's right.
During that time.
And no traditional funerals at all?
Right.
Were you, I mean, I
we
know
were able
didn't.
to have them. Grandpa passed in January. Grandma passed in July of this year.
Okay.
So we were kind of a year in,
right,
and maybe understood a little bit more about the social distancing and safety precautions.
But so many people lost people during that period of time where they couldn't even start we were talking about grief, and start the traditional American United States kind of grieving process, the Western culture.
Yeah, the Western culture. And for us, even walking through the dying process with two grandparents was difficult because sometimes you could only have one visitor a day at at the healthcare systems they were at, just due to some of those restrictions. So we were never able, except at the funeral, to kind of grieve all together in that traditional sense, where before, pre-pandemic, anybody, you could have your whole family at the hospital in that time, surrounded by that loved one.
Do you have any advice for people that have experienced that, like in 2020, before we just had 5 people at my dad's burial, and it was very sad and very different. But how can people get through it and think back and feel that we did not really do him an injustice or other members of the family?
I would say one way to do it is have a celebration of life. So even though that person may have been interned back into the earth, have a celebration of life. Get everybody together for a party, a balloon releasing, something memorable. I can think there was a gentleman in town, a very well-known, Sam Ramirez, who passed away of COVID, in his 50s. And everybody who went to his celebration of life got a jar of marbles.
Aww.
And I don't know what that signifies. I would have to find out, but it was something meaningful to him that everybody got a pint jar of marbles.
So we're going to take another break, Eric. We need to, but we're going to come back and continue this conversation about grief and the grieving process, and really that aspect of mental health, which is significant. And then we want to talk about what you see from your experience as what the hope then comes from grief. And we're going to do that when we come back after these messages here on Sparking the Conversation.
We are more than a counseling center.
More than just a medication or therapy session.
What do I like the most? It's got to be the team.
Providing the highest standard of care. That's just what we do.
And equipping patients with coping skills to be successful. That's so important.
It's simple. We are just hopeful. We are hopeful for our patients.
We are hopeful that we can help them find their way to a better balanced and more resilient self.
We are Hope 419.
Visit us today at hope419.com.
Get the everyday items you need at Menards. Procter & Gamble has the brands you can trust, whether you need paper towels or dryer sheets. Right now, stock up on all Procter & Gamble products. Get your home tidy with Lippmann. Whether you're sweeping, mopping, or doing small cleanups, we have the right product for the job. All Lippmann cleaning products are 11% off right now at Menards.
Save big money at Menards.
Introducing the Cool Turtle, the ultra-comfortable mask enhancer that creates a protective, cool, and breathable space between your mask and your face. Simply slide under any mask or gaiter and immediately feel the refreshing pocket of air surrounding your face. Cool Turtle's ergonomically designed, soft, comfortable shell immediately reduces mask friction, allowing you to breathe and talk in a comfortable environment.
I can actually breathe. With the Cool Turtle, no more sweating.
It's like I don't even have a mask on.
Call now and get not one, not two, but 3 Cool Turtles for just $10. Order now and we'll send you 2 more Cool Turtles free. No fees, absolutely free. Plus, you can get a 10-pack of 4-ply face masks. Just pay a separate fee. This offer is not available on Amazon. Get the real Cool Turtle now.
Call 1-800-374-3671. That's 1-800-374-3671. Or visit getcoolturtle.com. Order now.
And welcome back to Sparking the Conversation. We're here this evening with Eric Stigall. He's our guest. We're talking about grief. We're talking about all kinds of things related to your profession as in the pastoral area and in healthcare. And then your work as a funeral director now with Wappner Funeral Directors here in Mansfield. But Eric, we were talking in the break a little bit about grief and its relationship to mental health and how it affects mental health. Can you speak to that a little bit with your experience?
Yeah, and I'll share a little bit of my own personal experience as well. I've lost my last 2 biological grandparents this year, and I'm also someone who has worked through and continues to work through anxiety and depression, and that kind of enhanced that. When I walk through that, and when we walk through that as a family with my my other family members. But I see a lot of folks, especially in this pandemic time, struggling with closure because, as we talked about earlier, things are so different, so vastly different for families. There for a while, families couldn't travel to even be with their loved ones. Right. Because we didn't know if it was essential or non-essential.
Yes.
So there was some of that struggle, especially, if you were someone who lived out of the country. You couldn't.
Virtually impossible.
Virtually impossible. Right.
Well, with you saying virtually is the only way people could get help and counseling at one point.
Absolutely. Some of my weekly sessions with my counselor were virtual. And there was a disconnect there.
Yep.
It didn't feel as meaningful. Not that it wasn't unmeaningful. It didn't feel as meaningful.
Right.
But in the funeral and healthcare business, you can now have a virtual funeral. So, a link can be sent out to walk through that and to be watched by people who may not be able to make it. So that I would use that as a good example of technology, where people can still be there for that time of closure. And participate virtually with their family members and friends.
And I think that's been true with even getting together with your family members too. I know we've increased the use of our technology in the last year. My parents are in their 90s. They live out of state. We weren't seeing them, obviously, but we were able to connect that way when previously we were just talking on the phone. We wouldn't necessarily do it by video.
It was better in that respect.
Yeah. So, there are some good aspects that have come out of it too. But as it relates to grief,
The mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you've got your mental health. You're trying to find closure. What about hope? How do we give people who are grieving seriously, who feel that there's no hope or they don't know, that you've lost your 2 grandparents? What am I going to do now?
Right, and that's a great question. And for me personally, it was the assurance of knowing that I'll see both of them again someday, and having that assurance shared at their services. And that's, I come from an evangelical Christian family, so that assurance is in God. But no matter your spiritual group, there's assurance in the afterlife in some regard that you will be with your loved one somewhere.
I think hope is important, and I think in terms of grief, everybody. I think you talked about this before we got started tonight when we were just chatting prior to starting our filming. That grief is something that never goes away. Right?
It never goes away. It's cyclical, and you'll touch on those memories every year, and they may get easier. They may be just as hard. So when we talk about closure in the grief process, I'm hesitant to use that word closure because it never closes.
Yes.
That was someone who added value, who added purpose, who added meaning to people's lives and to humanity and to the earth. They participated in society. And so there's never closure per se.
But I think the hope too that even you talk about, and what we find hope in, besides our faith, is talking about her, talking about your parents, like you said, reliving stories.
Absolutely. For my grandpa, it was taking some of his tools. He was a builder. For my grandma, it was her love for vinyl records. And I'm an old soul anyway, so I appreciate those vinyl records deeply.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool. We talk about it. We've heard this before. It was really helpful, I think, to us in our losses. Is there's a difference between moving on, which I don't think we'll ever move on from our loss, but you do move forward, and that's part of working through your grief, right?
Absolutely. Definitely working through your grief and moving forward, and moving forward looks very different for everybody. So I was encouraged, if you're talking to a loved one or a friend or a family member about grief, don't rush the process.
Yeah.
Let them, crawl, walk, and run.
Yeah. Well, and just just be there and listen. Yeah. I'd love to keep talking, but we do have to end our show. We're going to be back with our memory moment on WMFD, and thank you again very much for being with us, Eric.
Thank you, guys.
Catalyst Life Services, a comprehensive behavioral health organization, has been serving the community for 70 years. Our wide array of wraparound services and our ability to treat the whole person is what sets us apart. It's everything you need in one place: mental health, crisis, detox and addiction services, case management, and peer recovery support. We even offer vocational programming to get you back to work. Catalyst Life Services. Call today and get the help you need.
If you've been injured, whether personal injury, medical malpractice, or wrongful death, you are not alone.
And you definitely don't have to fight alone. While you focus on recovery, let the Heck Law Offices focus on your case.
With over 45 years of combined legal experience, we understand your situation and the entire overwhelming legal process.
With an injury you're already handling too much, let our team be your advocate.
I'm Jeff Heck.
And I'm Jeff Stifler.
We're Mansfield's Injury Lawyers. Call us today or visit us at hecklawoffices.com.
Need insurance? SelectQuote found Jacob, 40, a $500,000 policy for only $19 a month. And SelectQuote found his wife, Wendy, a $500,000 policy for only $17 a month.
Our secret? At SelectQuote, we aggressively comparison shop up to 10 highly rated companies to find you the company with the best rates. Why pay more? Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
And welcome back to Sparking the Conversation here on WMFD. This is the portion of our show tonight that is called the Memory Moment. And for those of you who watch regularly, you know sort of what 33 Forever is all about and kind of the story of how we got started with this. But tonight we want to talk about how we literally, in our day-to-day lives, spark the conversation.
We do that. Sometimes we can clear a room with our discussion.
No, we can.
But one way to do it is to wear something that is a reminder to us about suicide prevention or suicide awareness, and then it does spark a lot of conversations. Jeff has a bracelet that says 33 Forever.
Yeah, we have these 33 Forever wristbands that we both sell and we wear all the time, and honestly, it sparks a lot of conversations. We'll run into people out and they go, what is that? What is 33 Forever? And then we're talking about it, and you know, you'd be amazed at the conversations that leads to. And then you always wear stuff too.
Yeah, bracelet that has the ribbon on it, and the same thing with suicide awareness. We'll wear the pin.
But I usually wear a pin on my lapel, and tonight as I got to the studio, I was like,
no pin.
I don't have my
Where's
pin.
your pin?
Yeah, I know. It must have fallen off. So anyway, it's a good reminder to us every day that it's really the thing that we're passionate about and that we feel so strongly about, and it's a great way for us literally to start a conversation and then to be able to share, number one, the story, and then hear amazing stories back once we share.
We do. There are, suicide awareness is just a proactive way to start a conversation, to raise awareness about the behaviors of suicide, the signs of suicide, and you're trying to bring attention to it, not to have this topic stigmatized.
Right.
We've got on the TV set the suicide prevention hotline, and what I recommend is please to put it in your phone. You may never need it, but you may need it for somebody who just wants to talk to someone on the other end of the line that can help them out with an issue with a friend, with a family member, or themselves.
Yeah, there's a national suicide prevention hotline, Lifeline, they call it. There's also a crisis text line, which in this day and age, with everybody texting, you text almost any word, maybe help or hope, to 741-741 on your cell phone, and they will almost immediately, instantly respond. And actually, Donna's even tested it.
Yeah, I have tested it, and it's great, and it's a good way to start a conversation with somebody who doesn't know where to go, who to talk with, and they can find out your location, send help if you need it. The Richland County Crisis Line number is 419-522-4357, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Call them. Sometimes I've had many people message me back after I've given them that number that I just needed someone to talk to. I'm back on track. I'm okay.
Yeah, so that's a really important one for those of you in Richland County. That's a local telephone number. That's a really good way to get local connection and local resources. It's answered locally. So anyway, all those things are super huge to our efforts and part of what we do really every single day. And this show has just been an outgrowth of that. So,
yeah, it has. And and again, if we hadn't lost Danny and hadn't had the ability to talk about it, we wouldn't have known half of these things. And I truly believe talking about it is really helping people become aware and know that they've got to do something at a time before crisis hits.
Right. So that's our memory moment for tonight. We appreciate so much you being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week at our regular time with the next episode of Sparking the Conversation.